Stage lights illuminated the town hall of Fredericksburg, Texas, casting a warm glow over the packed audience. George Strait stood center stage, guitar in hand, ready to perform for a cause closer to his heart than ever. The familiarity of the crowd soothed him, yet a growing heaviness weighed on his spirit. As he began to play, the notes of his song floated into the room, mingling with memories of past triumphs and unaddressed sorrows. With each strum, George felt echoes of those he had lost rise within him, the pain of not being able to save them pressing against his chest. He poured himself into the music, but the haunting recollections of a dear friend who had succumbed to addiction tugged at his heartstrings, reminding him of the shadows lurking behind even the brightest moments. No applause could wash away that regret. As the final chords faded, thunderous applause filled the air, yet George didn't feel the usual rush of joy. He stepped off stage, still encumbered by thoughts that pulled him away from the cheers of his fans. Among the throng, his gaze fell on a young woman standing by the exit, her face drawn with anxiety. It was Sarah Johnson, a name he knew through charity circles, a pregnant woman in dire need. "Hey there," he said softly, approaching her with an instinctive gentleness. Her eyes met his, wide with trepidation. "I'm just trying to gather supplies for the baby," she admitted, her voice quivering with vulnerability. "It's hard." The sincerity in her words struck a chord deep within George. The floodgates of his memories opened once more. He had felt similar helplessness in moments when others reached out, only to hold back, afraid to intrude or fail. This was one of those painful reminders of a past he had tried to bury, a past filled with the weight of lost opportunities. "I understand," he responded, stepping closer to her. "Let me help you. What do you need?" Sarah's startled expression lingered on her face, the flicker of hope fighting against her circumstances. "Really?" she whispered. "Absolutely. You're not alone in this," he assured her, feeling a rush of determination surge through him. He would not let her experience the same loneliness that plagued him. In that moment, an unspoken bond formed between them, a promise to shoulder their burdens together. As they exchanged words, a flicker of warmth grew within George, igniting a sense of purpose he had long sought after. He realized that he could channel this new energy into forging connections and inspiring compassion, sharing moments that transcended mere existence. Looking away, he felt Sarah's gaze lingering, intertwining with his own thoughts of regret and longing. He knew that this encounter would linger in his heart, a reminder that change was possible, and that love could bind them in ways he had yet to explore. As George walked into the cool night air, he felt the pulse of possibility stirring within him. This was a turning point, an awakening that urged him to redefine his path through compassion and shared strength. There was a fire within him now, a flicker of hope promising a brighter journey ahead, both for Sarah and for himself. It was a chance to rewrite the narrative, and he was ready to meet it head-on. With Block 1 concisely rewritten, let's proceed to Block 2, the past and the roots. In the soft light of dawn, George Strait sat on the porch of his childhood home, the gentle sounds of nature cradling him like an old friend. The faint rustle of leaves whispered stories of his past, weaving together the threads of family, love, and resilience that had shaped him into the man he was today. With a steaming cup of coffee in hand, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. His upbringing in Pecos, Texas, was rooted in simplicity and earnestness. He could hear his mother's laughter echoing in the kitchen, the comforting scent of cornbread melding with the aroma of fresh coffee. She had instilled in him a profound sense of compassion, a belief that kindness could catalyze change, not only for individuals, but for the entire community. His father, a hard-working rancher, had taught him the value of perseverance, illuminating the strength found in vulnerability. George had been raised to understand that every life was interconnected, like the branches of a grand old oak. But as he closed his eyes, memories of his rise as a country music star washed over him in waves. He recalled those early days filled with uncertainty, playing in local bars and community events. George had longed to share stories through song, to connect with others who felt love and heartache as deeply as he did, and connect he had, achieving fame and adoration. Yet with each success came a growing distance from the life he once cherished. The glimmer of stardom often cast shadows, leading him away from the simplicity that felt so right. He could see young faces in soup kitchens, waiting for meals with hopeful eyes, their struggles making his heart ache, a poignant reminder of Sarah's plight. There was a stark contrast between his experiences now and those raw struggles he witnessed then. Fame felt like a wall, comforting yet isolating, separating him from the very community that had nurtured his dreams. The sun began to rise higher, bathing the landscape in golden light. It was beautiful and tragic all at once. George thought about how isolation crept in when expectations swelled. Those years on the road, chasing applause, were void of the laughter shared over family dinners, the warmth of close friendships forged in hardship. He thought of the people he had left behind, and the wave of nostalgia that enveloped him filled his heart with sorrow. It wasn't fame that defined him. It was the connections that had built his foundation. Shaking off the shadows, George decided to take a step forward. His heart was aching to be of service again. He recalled Sarah. He had barely scratched the surface of her struggles, but when he left her side, a compelling vision for community support began to crystallize in his mind. Those dormant memories ignited an urgency within him. He had to confront the chasm growing between him and the life he once lived, to bridge it not just for himself, but for others like Sarah, who were fighting similar battles. Later that day, he pulled together a meeting with local friends and acquaintances, considering ways to rally support around Sarah's needs. His thoughts turned to Linda Martinez, a dedicated community organizer with a fierce compassion for those in need. He had crossed paths with her at previous charity events, and her spirit radiated strength and determination. Over coffee in a small diner with checked tablecloths, George shared his idea with Linda. "I think we need to organize a benefit concert. I want to raise money for Sarah and families like hers. Every little bit can help." Linda leaned in, her eyes alive with possibility. "That's a remarkable idea, George, but it's not just about money. We need to create a movement, to touch hearts and inspire others to come together." "Exactly. It's time we show our community that we care, that they are not alone," he responded, enthusiasm igniting his voice. As they bounced ideas around, George watched the way Linda's passion ignited others. Every idea sparked another, and soon fellow attendees began to share their experiences of struggle, resilience, and guts. They described moments when they had encountered despair, but also moments when compassion had changed their lives. In the days leading up to the concert, George saw a familiar hope blossoming in the community. Local businesses offered supplies, artists volunteered to perform, and hearts began to unite around a common cause. The small Texas town started to buzz with excitement, but it was more than just a concert. It was an affirmation, the purity of compassion soaking through every effort made for others. As he watched individuals come together, he realized through their unity, they were not only creating a support system for Sarah, but for everyone who had ever felt lost or forgotten. George felt the distance he had experienced for so long begin to close. The past no longer felt like a weight. It became a guiding light, a map showing him how kindness could reshape destinies. One evening, George sat alone on his porch again, looking up at the stars twinkling above. A familiar ache guided his thoughts back to the faces he had encountered, the faces of those who needed love, encouragement, and connection. It was a tapestry rich with stories, woven from shared laughter, heartache, and life lessons. He felt invigorated and hopeful. Tomorrow they would gather for the concert, and in that moment he knew this was more than an event. It was a beginning. Together they would create a new chapter, one where compassion became a bridge for understanding and connection, and for George, that was worth everything. With Feinstow Block 2 fleshed out, we can now move on to Block 3, the fall and the loneliness. The night of the concert had arrived, breathing life into the small town of Fredericksburg. Colorful banners danced in the breeze, while the tantalizing scent of food wafted through the air. Families gathered on the grassy field, with children's laughter lighting up the evening. It was more than just an event. It was a manifestation of community spirit, uniting everyone for a common cause. George stood backstage, his heart pounding with anticipation. He could hear the buzz of the crowd, a symphony of voices, all lost in expectation. As he adjusted his guitar strap, doubt crept in, nibbling at the edges of his excitement. Could he truly uphold the hopes and dreams tied to this night? As the curtain lifted, revealing the sea of faces before him, he fought back the urge to retreat. The warm light spilled over him, transforming the stage into a haven. As he began to play, he leaned into the music, pouring his soul into every chord. The cheers erupted like a wave of comfort, but beneath this current of adoration lay a deepening loneliness that tightened around his chest. Each smile in the audience felt both exhilarating and isolating. The enormity of their collective love only served to magnify his internal struggle. After his first set, George stepped off stage, the applause still ringing in his ears. But the thrill soon faded, replaced by a familiar sense of disconnect. The backstage area was filled with the sounds of equipment and voices, yet it felt cold and distant. Alone, he sat on an empty stool and stared into the darkness, battling the despair creeping back in. How was it possible to feel so isolated in a room full of people? Linda approached, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "You were incredible out there," she exclaimed, beaming pride. "Thanks, Linda. It just feels heavy right now," he admitted, his heart aching with the weight of uncertainty. Her expression softened, sensing the depth of his turmoil. "It's okay to feel that way. I think we all do sometimes, even in moments of joy. Maybe. But I thought coming back to my roots would fill the gaps. I still feel lost." George's voice trembled, revealing the undercurrent of pain he fought to suppress. "George, you're not alone. We're all here because we believe in what you represent," she reassured him. Before he could respond, Sarah appeared, her face lit with gratitude. "George, thank you for everything you've done tonight. It means the world." A flicker of warmth ignited in George's chest at her words, a reminder of the purpose behind his music. Yet, that relief was fleeting. The comfort of the community clashed with the lingering shadows veiling his spirit. As the night wore on, the upbeat energy of the concert felt like a cruel contrast to his internal chaos. When it was time for the finale, George stood at the front of the stage, the weight of his doubts pressing down on him. He gazed out at the cheerful faces, each one a testament to love and support. But then came the crippling realization that could he truly capture the essence of this night? Beginning the final song, he felt tension grip him, and suddenly his fingers slipped. A hush fell over the crowd as his heart raced with panic. In that moment of silence, he stood exposed, his fears laid bare under the spotlight. Regret swirled within him, feeling like an anchor pulling him down. This evening was supposed to ignite hope, not reveal weakness. "Hey, everyone," he finally spoke, his voice calm despite the turmoil inside. "Tonight I know many of us have felt lost at some point, and even when we're surrounded by friends and laughter, we might still feel alone. But we're all in this together, and that's what makes us strong." To his surprise, a wave of warmth surged through the crowd, and voices began to rise in solidarity, singing along with him. It was a collective heartbeat, blending their stories of resilience into one melody. George found himself enveloped in an embrace far more powerful than applause. The last notes reverberated in the air, and the crowd erupted into jubilant cheers. For the first time in too long, George felt a sense of belonging, a flicker of peace shimmering beneath the surface of pain. Each person out there was not just a fan. Each face held stories of their own battles fought and overcome. As the concert ended, he stood amid the cheers, and the loneliness that had once consumed him transformed into a sense of purpose. This was more than just music. It was a testament of connection and shared hope. George acknowledged that while shadows might come and go, together they could illuminate the way forward. He stepped off the stage with renewed determination. The concert had not only become an anchor for Sarah, but had also reignited a fire deep within him. The journey ahead would require courage, but he was ready to confront whatever came next, knowing he would never have to face it alone again. With Block 3 revised, we can now progress to Block 4, the rebirth. The days following the concert were filled with a vibrant energy, a pulse of newfound hope that resonated through Fredericksburg. George felt revitalized, as if the echoes of shared songs and laughter had infused every corner of his life with purpose. The community, once fragmented by individual struggles, had come together, cementing bonds that transcended their fears and insecurities. He revisited the families who had attended the concert, sharing meals, stories, and laughter. With each connection, George could feel the weight of loneliness dissipate. He'd found uncharted territory within himself, a place filled with empathy and understanding that had long been dormant. As he met new voices, he learned about their hidden battles fought in silence, discovering the profound strength found in vulnerability. One afternoon, George found himself seated at the local diner with Sarah, who had become a close ally in their journey. The worn leather booth was surrounded by the soft hum of conversation and the clattering of dishes. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a golden glow over the table as Sarah shared her story, her voice steady yet tinged with emotion. After the concert, I felt something shift inside me. It's like I finally understood that it's okay to lean into our pain, she confessed, sipping her coffee. You showed us that there is power in our stories. George nodded, his eyes focused on her, absorbing her words. We're all in this together, Sarah. You've become a voice of strength for so many. It's inspiring. They spent hours discussing plans to foster community gatherings, support groups, workshops, and sharing circles where the stories of others could rise to the surface, just as they had on the night of the concert. George felt determined. He wanted to keep the momentum alive, to turn the seeds of change they had planted into a flourishing garden of support. As the sun cast long shadows across the diner, George and Sarah laid out the groundwork for a community center, a sanctuary where laughter could mingle with hope. They envisioned a space filled with music, art, and compassion, a home for the stories of their friends and neighbors. Weeks passed, and the community rallied behind them. The collective spirit showcased the best of Fredericksburg. Time, talent, and resources poured into the project. It wasn't about handouts. It was about uplifting one another through shared experiences and growth. One evening, George gathered with a group of volunteers at the site of the future community center. The air was filled with laughter, and sounds of hammering and conversations merged into a symphony of solidarity. He marveled at how the space transformed into a vibrant hub of possibility, and he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "Hey, everyone," George called out, clapping his hands to draw attention. "I just want to say thank you for your energy and your belief in what we're creating here. We're not just building walls, we're building a home for stories, a place where we'll remind each other that nobody fights alone. Let's keep this spirit alive." A chorus of enthusiastic responses erupted from the crowd, each cheer echoing a deeper understanding of their shared mission. As the center's walls began to rise, George found moments to step back and reflect. The journey of the past few months had been turbulent, yet transformative. He finally understood that rebirth didn't erase the past. It embraced everything that led to it, the pain, the joy, the struggles, and the victories. Each moment contributed to the richness of life that music simply echoed. As the community center neared its completion, George felt an urge to share a song that embodied this journey, a song reflecting resilience and healing. He retreated one afternoon to his porch, the old guitar resting against him as he let the music flow. The chords resonated in the air, weaving a narrative of rebirth, of light chasing away darkness. In the distance, he could hear the laughter of children playing, the sounds of neighbors gathering, time-worn connections being reshaped and strengthened. With each note, George felt a deeper sense of fulfillment. This was the song of his heart, a gift shaped by the hands of many. The opening day of the community center arrived. A festive atmosphere enveloped the site, adorned with colorful decorations and overflowing with the enthusiasm of neighbors eager to celebrate. George felt a swell of pride as he looked around, seeing the fruits of his labor materialize into a beacon of hope for everyone in Fredericksburg. As he stood in front of the crowd, the nervousness that once gripped him before performances now transformed into an exhilarating anticipation. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, looking out at the sea of friendly faces. "This isn't just a building. This is a testament to our resilience, our shared strength. Together we've proven that love and compassion can mend even the deepest wounds." The crowd erupted in cheers, and George smiled, the warmth of their support wrapping around him like a familiar embrace. He lifted his guitar, letting the first notes echo through the air. As he sang the song he had crafted from their journey, he felt as if a spirit of renewal lingered in every lyric. The music carried the weight of their stories. He was no longer just a voice in a crowd, but a part of something greater. By the time the final chord rang out, the audience stood, applauding, tears shimmering in their eyes. George exhaled, filled with a bittersweet joy. He understood that this moment encapsulated the essence of their shared journey. Their tears spoke of struggles overcome, the laughter of resilience, and a unified spirit that now lit the way forward. Through the power of compassion and connection, George had not only rediscovered himself, but had also reignited a fire in his community. The road ahead would still hold challenges, but now they faced it together, bound by a collective strength that dared to rise above the shadows. Within Block 4, now fully developed, we will move to Block 5, the conflict and the challenge. The joy surrounding the community center's opening day soon gave way to a dawning realization. A sense of unease began to ripple through Fredericksburg. While the laughter and camaraderie had filled the air just days prior, George noticed a shift. The visitors who once arrived energized and hopeful now carried expressions of uncertainty and anxiety. In the days following the celebration, George witnessed this tension manifest itself when he visited the center. One afternoon, he walked in to find a small group of people gathered, voices rising in frustration. Sarah, sitting among them, looked troubled as the discussion turned heated. "We need to see real change here," one man exclaimed, his voice tinged with desperation. "It can't just be about hope and dreams. We need practical solutions for our families struggling every day." Another voice joined in. "It's great we have a center, but what are we actually doing to help ourselves? Talking is one thing, action is another." George felt the air grow thick with emotion, each statement a reminder of the heavy burdens the community carried. He understood their frustrations. They expected not only support, but tangible results. Deep within, George felt a familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. How could he be the beacon of hope when he, too, felt the shadows closing in? "Hey, everyone," he said, rising to speak after a moment of hesitation. "I hear you, and I understand the need for actions that speak louder than words. Let's work together to find solutions." The faces in the room softened, yet remained guarded. The hunger for clear direction was evident. They wanted to know how this center could truly serve as a lifeline, and as George listened, he felt a sudden resolve bloom within him. That evening, George called Linda, the spark that had ignited their community movement. As they met in the now familiar diner, he felt her energy wash over him, infusing him with hope. "Linda, how do we take this next step? I think we need to form a committee, a group that represents our needs more directly." "I think that's an excellent idea," she replied, excitement flickering in her eyes. "This committee can identify specific needs while holding us accountable. The people deserve to be heard and to see their concerns addressed." With newfound clarity, George organized an urgent meeting. As he stood in front of the diverse gathering, he could feel the weight of their expectations bearing down on him. "This community center is meant to unite us, but we need to pinpoint what's truly affecting our lives. Let's establish a committee, a voice for everyone here." The crowd fell silent for a moment, uncertainty hanging in the air. George could sense some reticence, but also sparks of curiosity. "We'll identify needs together. We'll create actionable goals. If we collaborate, we can bring real change to our community." Gradually, voices began to stir within the group. "We could start with job training programs," one woman suggested, "and support for mental health," another added, her voice reverberating with urgency. As ideas began to swirl, George felt hope rising among them, a transformation taking place. In the months that followed, the committee formed, embracing their diverse experiences while shaping initiatives that would foster real progress. George, Linda, and the others worked tirelessly, engaging with residents to understand their needs better. From job fairs to health workshops, the community center began to brim with activity and purpose. Yet with progress came conflict. While many thrived, not all saw the growing pains as beneficial. Some residents navigated setbacks, jobs slipping through their fingers, old wounds resurfacing amidst discussions of recovery. Their frustrations mounted, and as tensions simmered, George began to feel the strain of leadership. One afternoon, after a particularly challenging meeting, George found himself sitting outside the center alone. The weight of disappointment sat heavy on him. Why were they struggling to maintain momentum? Just then, he heard laughter, a group of children playing nearby, joy ringing through the air. He closed his eyes and listened, letting the sound wash over him. Gradually, inspiration took hold. Facing distraction and frustration was part of the process. George understood that true change was not linear, and even in the presence of conflict, the spirit of community could endure. He returned inside with rejuvenated energy, gathering the committee. "Listen, everybody," George began, standing at the front of the room. "We've done incredible work, but we can't lose sight of the journey. We need to celebrate our small victories, even amid struggles. Those victories will fuel hope and remind us why we came together in the first place. His reminder resonated deeply, sparking a discussion about resilience within their shared path. The group shifted gears. Rather than focusing solely on immediate challenges, they acknowledged each success. They decided to hold a community showcase to share progress and highlight individual stories of triumph. As the showcase day approached, excitement swirled in the air. George, filled with purpose, gathered stories from their neighbors, tales of rebuilding lives, acknowledging pain and celebrating resilience. Their struggles would become the heart of the showcase, seamlessly intertwining the promise of hope. The day arrived, and the community center was alive with energy. The walls adorned with photos and stories echoed laughter, the atmosphere a rich tapestry woven from each individual's journey. George took the stage, his heart swelling as he beheld familiar faces, intricately linked through shared trials and victories. "Thank you all for being part of this," he began, addressing the gathered crowd. "Our stories, our lives, they're not separate, they're deeply interconnected. Today, we celebrate every step that's led us here." With every tale shared, George saw a flicker of connection reignite, the pain dissipating, transformed by the strength of vulnerability. As he finished speaking, he felt overwhelmed by gratitude, recognizing that the conflicts they faced had brought them even closer together. In the weeks that followed, though challenges still arose, they became opportunities for deeper connection and strength. George knew there would be bumps along the road to progress, but together they had created a foundation, a community empowered by resilience, united in determination. The conflict had been a catalyst, reinforcing their commitment to journey forward. George acknowledged that while uncertainty loomed ahead, hope burned brighter than ever. Together they were crafting a narrative not bound by despair, but illuminated by the strength of their bonds. With UE Block 5, now revised, we will move on to UE Block 6, the climax and the resolution. The autumn sun dipped low on the horizon, casting golden hues across Fredericksburg as preparations for the community festival reached a fever pitch. It was a day of celebration, a culmination of their shared journey, and George could feel the intensity surrounding it. Excitement mixed with a twinge of anxiety as echoes of past challenges loomed in his mind. On the morning of the festival, George arrived early, breathing in the crisp air still tinged with the remnants of night. The community center was transformed. Colorful decorations adorned every corner. Tables laden with food and crafts showcased the talents of local artisans, and the laughter of children rang through the air. Yet, beneath that surface, bulged the anxiety of countless tasks yet to be completed. As volunteers rushed about, George caught sight of Sarah near the crafting station, a flurry of activity swirling around her. He approached her, noticing her brow furrowed with focus. "How's it going, Sarah?" he asked, a hint of trepidation in his voice. "Almost ready, just finishing touches," she replied, but glanced up at him with a hint of concern. "What about you? Are we ready for the performance?" "We will be," he said, forcing a smile to mask the tightening in his stomach. "But I can feel the weight of expectations. This is our moment to shine. But what if I don't deliver?" "Hey, you've already uplifted us all. This isn't just about you. It's about everyone, and they're here to see the community they've built together. You'll do great," she reassured him. George felt a warmth spread through him at her words, and for a brief moment, loneliness evaporated. They had indeed forged a path together, and now it was time to embrace the beauty of that journey. As afternoon waned into evening, the festival kicked into high gear. The sounds of music mingled with laughter, and the community began to pulse with a newfound energy. Vendors set up booths, families gathered in joyful clusters, and friends reunited, all of them drawn together by the spirit of resilience and hope. When it was finally time for George to take the stage, he sought out the familiar faces of his neighbors in the crowd. They held posters they had created, each one a testament to their journey, stories of loss, growth, and the determination to forge ahead. The sight nearly brought him to tears. This was not just an audience, they were family. With the first chords of his song reverberating in the air, George felt a familiar thrill wash over him. Each note was laced with the stories and struggles of those around him, and as he sang, he poured his heart into each lyric. The crowd swayed, voices blending with his, creating a tapestry of sound that wrapped around them like a warm embrace. The energy in the air shifted and coalesced into something almost tangible, a sense of community that surged through them like an electric current. When the final note resonated, the applause erupted, an overwhelming wave of appreciation that washed over him. But George wanted more than just applause. He wanted to create peace, to relativize the struggles they had faced together. "Thank you," he exclaimed, still breathless from the music. "Tonight isn't just about my song, it's about our stories. Together we're a force, sharing our struggles, our victories, shifting the narrative toward the light." The crowd erupted into cheers, and for a heartbeat George felt almost invincible under their gratitude. But then the spotlight dimmed for a moment, the shadows of doubt creeping back in. Would they truly be able to sustain this momentum? Would they remain connected after the lights faded? As the festival continued, George stepped away to collect his thoughts. He wandered to the outskirts of the center, where several community members were gathered in deep conversation. They spoke not only of their dreams and needs, but shared laughter, snippets of joy intermingled with the messiness of life. This was the very essence of connection. Among the buzz, George spotted an unfamiliar face, an older man leaning against a nearby tree, his expression marked by a mix of curiosity and hesitation. The man watched the gathering but stayed back. George felt drawn to him, recognizing a kindred spirit who had perhaps been through his own battles. "Hey there," George called out as he approached, his tone warm and inviting. "I'm George, welcome to our festival. What do you think so far?" The man turned, startled but intrigued. "I've lived in the shadows too long. It's been hard to shake off the weight." George nodded understandingly, drawing closer. "It's never easy, but every journey begins by taking one step. This festival is a part of that step, a place where we can all share our burdens together. You don't have to walk in darkness." The older man's face softened, and for the first time, George saw a flicker of hope reflected in his eyes. "I don't know how to be part of that," he admitted, vulnerability threading through his voice. "It all starts with a conversation," George encouraged, his heart swelling with compassion. "No one here is alone. It's about walking together, lifting each other up." The night wore on, and George realized that this whole festival was more than just an event. It was about igniting connections among those who felt disconnected, ensuring that no one remained in the margins of solitude. As the celebration began to wind down, the echoes of music and laughter intertwined in the air. George stood amidst the sea of faces, feeling their warmth envelop him. This was the resolution he had long sought: community, resilience, and hope intertwining into a powerful narrative that would endure through the challenges ahead. Holding on to the belief that this was merely the beginning, George vowed to continue building on this connection, knowing they had forged unbreakable bonds. Together, they would navigate whatever came next, hand in hand, heart by heart. When the festival came to an end, George felt a sense of accomplishment wash over him. The threads of their stories woven together would guide them through the future. Underneath the vastness of the Texas sky, George realized that while their journey would hold challenges, they had constructed a foundation strong enough to weather any storm. United in spirit and nurtured by love, they were ready to illuminate the way forward, striking a balance of hope against adversity that would carry them through. George embraced this moment as a new beginning, an unwavering belief in the power of community and the beauty of connection. With Han Block 6 fully developed, we can now progress to Block 7, the final reflection and the tie-in to the theme. As the festival began to wind down, George strolled outside the community center, soaking in the sweet remnants of laughter and music echoing through the crisp night air. The festivities had transformed not only the space, but also the spirit of Fredericksburg. The decorations, now gently swaying in the breeze, embodied the shared joy woven through each neighbor's story. He spotted the older man from earlier, seated quietly on a bench, gazing out at the festivities with a contemplative expression. Recognizing the opportunity to connect once more, George approached him. "What do you think of everything that's happened today?" he asked, settling down beside him. The man turned slowly, as if emerging from deep thoughts. "It's remarkable," he replied, his voice tinged with awe. "I felt something tonight that I haven't felt in years, a sense of community." "That's exactly what we aimed for," George replied softly. "It's about showing that together we can rise." The older man sighed, a mixture of relief and apprehension crossing his features. "I lost my wife a while back. I learned to avoid connections, thinking it would minimize the pain. In that moment, George recognized not just the vulnerability but the opportunity for healing. Grief is a heavy burden to carry alone, he said gently, "but sharing our burdens can lighten the load. You belong here, and it's never too late to reconnect." With George's encouragement lighting the way, the man began sharing more of his journey. Stories filled with loss, but also hints of hope. George listened intently, realizing that each word formed connections between them, bringing warmth to the shadows. George then glanced toward the vibrant group of friends further down the lawn, laughter spilling from them like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Want to join them?" he asked, motioning with an inviting smile. The man hesitated, apprehensive. "I'm not sure I'll fit in." "You'll see," George encouraged. "Come on. It starts with a single step." Gathering his courage, the man nodded, and together they walked toward the laughter. As they merged into the joyful crowd, George saw the man start to engage, the tension in his shoulders slowly easing with every conversation he participated in. Standing at the edge of the celebration, George felt a swell of satisfaction rise within him. The profound connection unfolding before him reminded him of their shared humanity. Awaiting each moment of joy, he contemplated how vital these connections were, bridging gaps and healing wounds. Later that night, with the last chords of music fading into the night, George reflected on the deeper essence of the festival. It had become much more than an event. It symbolized resilience, connection, and hope. Each person's story had merged to create a vibrant portrait of community, one that celebrated triumphs as much as it acknowledged struggles. As the stars twinkled above, he took a moment to appreciate the journey they had embarked upon together. The beacons of connection they had forged would guide them through future challenges, a testament to the strength found within unity. With a renewed sense of purpose, George returned to where the festivities had taken root, commitment burning bright in his heart. He looked around, filled with gratitude for every person present. They had proven that in sharing their individual narratives, they could carve out a collective legacy. In that serene moment, George envisioned the future for Fredericksburg. They would continue to rise together, forming a tapestry woven from empathy and love. The pain of their pasts could coexist with newfound hope, lighting their path forward. With the festival closing out, George embraced the possibility of what lay ahead, a shared determination to walk beside one another through whatever storms may come. The community had grown, intertwined in ways that only vulnerability could seed. Standing beneath the vast Texas sky, George knew that their journey was just beginning, filled with purpose and promise. Together, they had cultivated strength to rise above hardship, allowing the spirit of connection to illuminate their path. As he prepared to return home, George smiled, knowing that the power of community would remain a beacon, a source of resilience reminding them all of the beauty and strength found in the bonds they shared. Each story uniquely sung, yet harmonizing in the symphony of their lives, offering comfort amid the uncertainty of tomorrow. This concludes Block 7. Thank you for your patience as we crafted this emotional narrative of resilience and connection.